Pony Express. Check out their line of penetration testing devices, including the Pwn Pad, Pwn Phone, and Pwn Pro. For enterprises, there's Pwn Pulse, providing continuous visibility into wired, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth spectrums across all physical locations, including remote sites and branch offices. For all those hard-to-reach places, there's Pony Express. Visit them on the web at ponyexpress.com. This episode is brought to you by IT Pro TV, binge-worthy learning for IT teams. Why is it binge-worthy? It's learning presented in an engaging and entertaining talk show format that beats voice-over PowerPoint snooze fests. IT Pro TV offers an on-demand course library with more than 3,300 hours of content. Watch on your desktop, on the go, or in the comfort of your own living room. IT Pro TV is IT training you and your team actually want to watch, which means a better return on your learning investment. Get started with IT Pro TV for Teams with a special offer for Security Weekly listeners. Visit itpro.tv/Security Weekly to start a 7-day free trial and get 30% off a standard or premium IT Pro TV membership using the code SECWeekly30. Stop attackers from domain credential theft and lateral movement with a 99% success rate by using artificial intelligence to control the attacker's perception of the environment. Javelin Networks is the world's first endpoint intrusion containment platform to protect domain networks. Javelin detects targeted attacks and breaches by obfuscating Active Directory, domain controllers, domain identities, domain credentials, and all domain resources. It only takes one compromised machine to jeopardize the entire organization. Don't be a victim. Visit javelin-networks.com and request a demo of AD Protect today. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. We're going to talk about our fine friends at IT Pro TV. Of course, great resource.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking about recording some footage at my house of me cooking while watching IT Pro TV, because you can totally.
That's probably a good idea.
Right.
Give one of the boys a camera.
Yeah.
You give the cool camera angle.
Yeah.
Stuff you haven't seen before.
It's awesome.
I was looking at some of the courses they got coming up and some of the content. Look, because we talk about them, and I've been encouraged by the folks that come and enjoy learning from them, and they tell us about the stories to it. But what I enjoy is that when you get to talk to the folks and you get to understand their process and their passion for it. What I've learned in this industry is that there's people who do the training because they can make money at the training and they don't care. I'll tell you, even in the leadership industry, Paul, I've had conversations with people where they say, well, I mean, I don't have to change because people keep paying me, so why would I change? And what I love about IT Pro TV is they go, yeah, no, we're going to keep changing. They're looking at metrics. It's the distinction between, hey, I think we can get rich doing this versus, hey, I think we can go put out quality content that people need that's going to make their jobs easier. It's going to help them level up. It's going to. I love being around that. It's really refreshing to me, and I think it's an interesting model to have that much training available to you. So you're not locked in. You didn't just buy a course, right? And hopefully it works out. And by the way, then you feel guilt because you bought the course, but you didn't really make time to get to the course, but you don't really know. I was really surprised when we talked to them, and they're like, well, one of the things people do is they just kind of leave it on in the background, or apparently when they cook, and they catch up on stuff, and you don't have to know all of it, but if you got something out of it, then that was a great use of your time on your commute or whatever else. And I went, oh, that's freaking awesome. So it's a good way to do it.
InfoSec World, is it OS 18-SW? Yeah, it's OS 18-SW is the discount code for InfoSec World. Is it infosecworld.misty.com, MISTI.com? That
sounds right.
Sounds right. I think I got it.
You're clicking today, man. You got it.
I got it. You should go there. Yeah, there it is right there up on the screen. It is happening March 18th through the 21st at Disney World. So you should totally come with us to Disney because we'll be there.
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting. It's a great. People may not think about that because you think about Disney and you go, oh, well, I'm going to go to Disney just to go play. And without a doubt, there's people who do. But it's at the Contemporary Resort. It's a great place to stay, and they do a great job. I mean, Disney is known for their service. And if you want to go to a place where the weather's good, the conversations are great, I think KT does a great job curating the conference. And I know everybody loves the fact that I use that word all the time, but it's been a lot of fun. And that's also where you and I enjoy our time walking the show floor.
Yes.
Pick our A for the day, and we got some thoughts around that too. So yeah, it'll be good times.
It's a great conference for a lot of reasons. It's not too big, but it's not too small. It's like 1,000 people, 75, 80 vendors over the course of 2 days in a nice, warm, sunny place in a nice venue that's well run.
Yep.
So therefore, it's usually
and good talks.
Yearly and good talks. Yes, yeah, so it's a yearly destination.
It's one of the few conferences when I kind of waded back into getting into conferences again. I went. I was like, all right, fine, I'll go. And I was like, oh, wait, hold on. You're not trying to sell me something. you're not wasting my like. I was like taking notes and coming away going, okay, it was good use of my time. So I like that, and I appreciate that in the conference.
Awesome.
Yeah. Good stuff.
So we're talking about Beyond Trust and their messaging recently about taking privileged account management into the hybrid cloud. So they're saying you got AWS, you got Azure, you got Google Cloud, and you need to apply some kind of privileged identity across all those different cloud environments. They also talk about how, and they really do rock at the Linux, Unix privileged identity management, right? And I think that's kind of like the stepchild, redheaded stepchild of identity. We just talked about Active Directory and how important it is, right? But like you have a lot of those similar issues with identity management across Linux and Unix systems and controlling things like sudo access. If you think about that, Linux and Unix, I think, obviously do a much better. Like Linux and Unix don't inherently trust all of the. I mean, to a certain extent, they do, right? But you can control that. With things like sudo, and now you can layer on top of that and have something that manages it out at scale. Well,
yeah, it's always going to be the at scale problem. Yep. Like almost any of these things, you can manage it on a box, hopefully, and maybe in a couple of virtualized machines. But the minute you go to scale and you have multiple people, because the thing I always look at when we look at managing some of this stuff too, and I'm thinking about some of the own mistakes I've made in my career. You go back 20 years. Paul, we had batch windows. Like I could shut stuff off. Like I didn't need to be on all the time. So I didn't need 7 administrators. I could have gotten by with 1 or 2 because, well, it's not available. Get it tomorrow.
Right.
But that's not the world we live in anymore. And so that has changed this complexity for everybody. But, it's interesting because I haven't really thought a lot about the hybrid cloud, cloud or any of it. I guess hybrid clouds are kind of interesting. But I just know in my own experience, you have a need to use, Google and AWS and the Azure, or you're in Office 365, and so now think about trying to manage that stuff at scale. I can see how people are losing sleep over that, or they just kind of buried their head in the sand.
My thing for Beyond Trust is like, what's your one thing? Right? Like, what's the one thing that you? And I think after I've gone through all those books we've talked about.
Yep.
And they all, I think, approach it, well, most of the books approach it from, well, at least Play Bigger in the Brain Audit, approach it from, like, you got to pick your one thing. And I think both those books hit on that. Like,
I'm going to say even Never Split the Difference.
Yeah.
When you're looking at tactical empathy and you're looking at how do I get you where you need to be, there's almost always one thing.
One thing.
There's something that's most important to you. There's something you're worried about.
Right.
That's what he calls the black swans.
So what is it for Beyond Trust? I mean, they've got a vulnerability management solution. They've got Power Broker, which does a whole bunch of things, and now they've got this hybrid cloud thing. Like, what's your one thing when you think Beyond Trust? Like, what's your one thing?
Yeah. So the funny thing is, when I think Beyond Trust, I always go, "Man, I know that name."
Yeah, they've got great brand awareness.
Yeah, like a brand awareness.
Sure.
But I don't associate with anything. I'm always like, "Oh, I should go check out what they do." Gosh. Okay. Well, I'm kind of busy right now. By the way, that's why we keep talking about that need to have one thing and to get really clear on it. And here's the corollary to that. Can you do multiple things? Sure. Yeah. Awesome. But do those later. Like if you've solved one problem well, then you're good to go, and people bring it back into it.
Anyway, we'll explore that further.
Yeah, well, and I'm looking at their website right now just to see if I see anything more about it. I mean, it definitely seems to me like they're all about privileged identity management, or privileged access management. Like they're all about
that's their one thing.
That's probably their one thing. And actually, then, so if you're looking at that from a hybrid cloud, that's a good extension to it, right?
Yeah.
We're really good at this. By the way, we can do Linux, we can do Unix.
Yeah.
Now I can do cloud. Well, so whatever you got, I can do it. That's great. That's a good story.
The example in the Brain Audit is I run a hotel, and my one thing is you're going to get a good night's sleep.
Right.
That's your one thing. But now think about all that plays in it. They're like, we got 11 different pillows. We got like an oil diffuser in every room. We start the rooms on the 5th floor. Like there's all those different things that play into it. And this was an announcement from Beyond Trust, I think, with those supporting things that we do privileged identity management really well.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep.
So VIVOTEK and Trend Micro announced a strategic partnership in cybersecurity. I'd never heard of VIVOTEK before, but I'm familiar with the CCTV problem. And really what I'm not sure how we...
All right, so fill us in on the problem. What's the problem?
I look at the problem as when you acquire a video surveillance system, security, and it's weird because it's a physical security device, but the cybersecurity component to it is atrocious.
Yeah. Well, so that's what I was asking, because if you go back to it and you look at, right, we keep talking about this idea of convergence in our industry. And over the last 20 years, you can track whether it was separate teams coordinated, one team under one person, or some hybrid. And I don't actually know where the pendulum is anymore. It's all kind of muddied up.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing with this is cameras used to require their own cables. When they started being able to go power over Ethernet or just straight Ethernet jack, the interesting thing was a lot of the security teams that were physical security teams weren't required to, didn't have to coordinate with the cybersecurity teams. They just needed a port somewhere, slam the jack in, they were good to go with it. So then when you start looking at it from a security side now, you say, well, hold on, wait, so where you have cameras, you've got a vulnerability. Where you've got kiosks, security kiosks, you've got a vulnerability, and it's, okay, we got to start looking at it differently.
Of course, and there's the lack of security on the controllers that we saw with Mirai. A lot of what they were taking over was the DVRs associated with CCTV systems. And what I find,
because they used to be closed. I mean, keep in mind, right? When we started this, they were closed systems. That's it. Yeah, they were closed systems. They were on their own network. That's the whole idea. CC, closed circuit television. You know, like, and that's where we had all those really cool movies. Like you'd either crimp onto the cable, or you'd splice the cable, or you'd piggyback off of it. But now, I mean, it's just on the network. Have a good time. All right, so how does VIVOTEK play into this? I mean, so I'm reading this, right?
Oh, so Trend Micro is now applying security to this for them. So you find that the surveillance physical security companies are partnering with cybersecurity companies to improve security. I'm not sure how Trend Micro necessarily applies. I think a lot of security companies are playing on this. We want to be an IoT security company, so
that's
we'll
what
make
it feels
a partnership
like. That's what it feels like,
yeah.
Right? Because I mean, I'm looking at this, right, and I've done work with Trend in the past, and I like Trend. In fact, I think Trend doesn't always get a lot of credit for some of the kick-ass stuff that they're doing. But as I'm reading this, so basically, I've got IP surveillance, and I'll use their stuff in cybersecurity, and therefore, we're going to be good when it comes to securing IoT.
That's weird.
I mean, I studied logic in school, and I'm not following the chain on that, and I'm not knocking anybody involved. This is the problem for me. Some of these things, they end up saying nothing. So it's a lot of buzzwords. And I guess what I'm trying to get my head wrapped around is how would incorporating Trend into this? Like, so I'm in the enterprise, Paul. We're a Symantec shop, and you want to go buy those IP cameras, and oh, good news, they've got Trend incorporated into them. How do I make that work?
Well, I think the fact that you're having those conversations is probably
you're ahead of okay, fair point.
Because I think, like, who owns the integrity of the physical security controls, right? Of your badge systems, of your cameras. Who owns the integrity of those systems? And what they're addressing here is the integrity of those systems.
Yeah, and this is exactly those conversations. So it goes back to, and by the way, right, what I've often liked is when I talk to somebody who's been doing this long enough, and they say, you know, the problem isn't who each of these teams reports to. It's, do we work together? And what I've often found is I've looked at organizations where the model is they have completely separate structures, but man, they are inseparable and they work great. And then I've worked at ones where you need one boss over everybody to get it all to work the right way. But I think that's the right question. Who owns that integrity? When you take a physical device that's giving you physical security advantage, but you're running it on the network, and it's now computer controlled, so it's essentially a new endpoint. Oh, well, thanks for blurring the lines on that. And we've got to figure it out at some level. And I don't think we're good at that because, you know, keep in mind, too, if you're a high-performance team, the paradox of the high-performance team is little problems like this don't pop up until they either become big problems or they never really become big problems. They just become those little niggling problems that you just keep whacking and moving down the road. Because if you've got people on your cyber team that understand physical, they're probably like, it's good, we'll control it this way. And you've got people on your physical team that understand cyber, like, it's good, I can just do this, we're good. And they're just trying to get by. It's tough to stop and say, hold on, is this the right way to do it? Is this the smart way to do it? Are we making a good investment, or are we chipping away hours a day, and that's just going to shoot us in the foot at some point? And I always like to say, you can shoot yourself in the foot, you just can't reload. It's the reloading and doing it again that's a bad strategy here.
You know what's interesting is I tend to think about where the physical security department, like at a university, it's called public safety.
Yep.
Where do they report up into in the organization?
Well, I'll tell you something interesting.
Because I'm sure it varies, but when I was in the university, we in IT all reported up to the CIO.
Yep.
Right? When you looked at other departments, like any academic department, computer science, they would report up to the like the dean or the provost, right? And then when you looked at public safety, like, I don't even remember where that reported up to. I'm 99% sure that they did not report to the CIO.
Yep. That'd be shocking if they did.
I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is, but it's something to consider.
Well, let me tell you something I've seen, because I've done some work recently with universities.
Yeah.
In fact, I've been really impressed looking at enterprise. You know, and you've got this background. The language that I've been seeing more and more is because we talk about this influence without authority. No better place, you know this, working in a university, because go to a tenured staff and tell them you want to do something different. Okay, good luck with that. What I've started to see is this interesting model where you get people now from public safety that are assigned to the security team. So they are still, depending on your campus and the makeup, they're still badged. They're still armed officers, or they're still officers of peace. But their collateral duty, quite frankly, for them is, oh, congratulations, you're now tasked out to cybersecurity. And that's exactly how they've started to do it. And it's very much the model we see with a lot of police agencies today. They'll task somebody out to another agency. They're tasking them out. But now what that's done is that's given you that integration. And one of the teams I worked with, they've actually merged their physical and their cyber team together, and they have somebody from public safety tasked out who spends time with both.
Nice.
It's freaking awesome. Like, it gets me excited. And so what I'm digging about universities is I think that's the future of security. I think if you go look at the models universities are forced to adopt, I think we've got the future of where we're going to go with security.
And I wonder where it falls in enterprises. Do they all report up to the CIO?
This is the thing I keep finding in enterprises. The answer is it's all over the place.
Yeah.
You got chief risk officers, you got chief legal officers, you have chief security officers who are only physical, and then you have chief security officers who are physical and cyber, and then you have chief information security officers. Sometimes they report to the executive, although we don't see that very frequently. Sometimes they report to the CIO, sometimes not. Lately now I see CFO a lot more often.
Yeah.
And so I think this is where I'm going to come back to. If you're getting wrapped up around who I report to or how it works, don't. Go focus on, do we have good communications and good pathways? Do I have a way to escalate? Are they listening to concerns? Because you know what I always hear people say, well, you know, Paul, if I report to the CIO and I'm at conflict with them, they'll just terminate it, and that's not good for security. Let me be clear. Never met a CIO who didn't care about security.
Right.
Never. Not in 20 years. Never. Now, is it possible that you didn't make your case successfully, and as a result, the CIO made a different choice? Yes. Also, is it possible that you made your case stellar, exactly what you needed to do, totally understood it, and the CIO went, yeah, and out of the 50 other things I'm taking a look at, that's just not in my top 10?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That happens. So you know, who owns it? I think the question is always going to be less about who owns it as to how do we get to where we want to be together. Right. Ask that question, get to the path, and you're going to love it.
A really cool article from ServiceNow is one of the sponsors on our network. They wrote an article called an automation manifest, and I kind of just by the title knew where they were going. But I pulled out what I think is some really smart stuff. They say in the article, educate for empathy and champion creativity. I'm like, wow, that's like something Michael would say.
It felt very comfortable when I read that part to it.
And then they say emotional intelligence plays a role in everything.
Yep.
And I think really the context of this is getting people to embrace automation.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me because I've spent my whole life trying to figure out how to get enough stuff done that for me, like anything I can automate, I'm like all about it. But I get how there's almost like a societal fear right now that automation is going to take stuff away. Here's the thing, right? Because I got a background in economics. You know what happened when we went with ATMs? Do we have more tellers or less tellers as a result of having ATMs?
The same.
We have more. You know why? This is surprising to most people. You know why? Because the cost of building a bank got cheaper, and we could build more banks. And that meant then that I could let the ATM do simple stuff like deposit your check and take cash out. But if you need something more complex, you could still go see the teller.
Right.
The teller's job got more important, and we ended up with more teller's jobs, not less, because of the automation. So automation in history has never really been a problem. I used to talk about working yourself out of the job. If you could get yourself out of the job,
I talk about that all the time.
And you could script it, build out your process, and then hand it over to somebody else. You never got fired for that.
No.
If you were the person who could figure that out, you could go forward. But I liked their approach because a lot of the power that ServiceNow brings, I could see how somebody went, but I could do that better. And I always remember, and I'm so embarrassed, I'm drawing a blank on his name, Milton. One of the great economists. And I remember there's this story that he's in China, and they're very proud, and they're showing him how they've got this ditch project, and they've got thousands of people with shovels and they're digging, and they're very excited about that. And he said, you have steam shovels over there, you have earth movers and bulldozers. Why aren't you using those? And they said, well, this is about helping people. And he said, well, if you're helping people, use spoons, not shovels. Like, what are you trying to get done here? And so I like that they went this way. And we talk about emotional intelligence. They also talk about STEM, and there's this nuanced difference between STEM and STEAM. STEAM adds arts into it. Anytime you get the chance, go for STEAM. Here's why: arts or empathy. The arts empathy, whether you're doing music or you're drawing or you're orating, you're acting, you're doing anything, dancing. You're doing anything related to art. Art is about emotion, and that teaches you about that empathy, and it teaches you how to better understand stuff from different perspectives. And I think it's absolutely fantastic. I like it. No, I like the way they put it out. I also like they talked about not fearing it, and realizing that the automation isn't scary, it's the change that's scary.
Yeah.
I think that's a really key point. I don't think a lot of people are upset. Paul, if I could take this mundane crap out of your day that you really hate doing anyway, you upset? No. That's going to mean a change. Whoa, my bad. I like it. Let's go ahead and keep it the way it is.
Right.
People aren't fighting automation as much as they're fighting change. I think that's a really good opportunity.
There was also an article in here about expanding fraud protection services that I thought was interesting. I don't really have much insight into this article other than I think fraud protection services are interesting because it's one of those areas where things like machine learning can really make a difference. Yeah,
and we've talked we've talked to different people before about this, and this is always a fun topic when Jack, Daniel, and I get together talking about this. But when you look at fraud prevention, the U.S. has taken a very different approach to fraud prevention than the rest of the world. And as a result of that, right now, our fraud numbers are at the lowest that they've been possibly historically. But what's interesting is when we went to chip and pin, and I appreciate in the U.S. we're still predominantly chip and signature, but here's the thing, that didn't change it because you have two types of fraud, CFP and CNP, card present or CPF, card present and card not present. Card present fraud is like somebody going to the local retailer and swiping a card, but it's a fraudulent card. That's always been a problem. But that wasn't the big problem because what's the biggest growing segment of retail today? Online retail. Okay, so in online retail, the card is not present. Yes, they'll ask you for all sorts of information around it, but they don't have any way to identify the card, and they can't identify your ID with the card or anything else. So those protections are gone. And this points out that since Canada's shift, so this is a Canadian focus, since Canada's shift to chip and pin card transactions in 2011, card not present fraud has increased by 130%. Which is no shock because if you look at it, it's what they call an efficient transfer mechanism. It's a lever. Yep. And it basically says, oh, so you've made it harder for me to defraud somebody in person? Okay, well then we'll go online. So yeah, so anytime somebody's got a different way of looking at it, or we're starting to use things like machine learning, like I got to tell you, initially Visa, right, so one of the card brands came out and they said, why don't we start looking at using your phone for that? And I was like, wait, what? But Paul, we've done so many interviews with people now, and I've adopted some of this technology myself where I'm like, wow, this is totally awesome. We're living in the future. Like the amount of discrete details we can get now to figure stuff out. I think the next step in fraud, right, what I think some of the banks have done that's brilliant is they've turned it into a benefit. I'll text you when there's a fraud. Yeah. I'll let you, and like I'll put you back in control. People are like, yes. You know what I want? Just knock that crap out. Don't call me. Don't cancel my card. Don't deny me when I'm traveling. Don't give me any of those hassles.
Just take care of the fraud.
It just happens. It just takes care of. And then I think what the merchants and the people who work with smaller businesses would say, and stop making them foot the bill. Right. Because let me tell you right now, the card brands don't pay for it. And everybody says, oh, the banks pay for it. No, they don't. No, the merchants, it's usually the small merchants get caught. So anytime we've got the ability to help somebody understand it better, I think it's great strategy, and I'm glad to see it.
Do you love the word visibility, Michael?
You know what? I do. In fact, some of the clients I've been working with, one of the things that they enjoy is we do some whiteboard sessions, Paul, and they like the fact they get to see something. And I've noticed over the last year and a half, we get this concept of visibility a lot. I want visibility into my network. I want visibility into my vulnerabilities. I want visibility into my assets. So I do. I hope it's not getting overplayed.
Oh yeah, it's getting overplayed in this article. They use it a lot.
Oh, they use it a lot. We should count it.
If you want to work on counting it, you're gonna have to.
My goodness.
Count
okay, so
high.
it says it a lot.
Yeah. So they've released new capabilities in their recent version that provide complete end-to-end visibility. They include enhanced visibility for AWS, which offers in-depth visibility into internal topology of AWS. They also
wow. Okay, so I got to stop you here because when you use the word visibility so many times and then you don't actually define it for me, I'm
loses
lost.
the effect, right?
I'm lost. Like, because like on a headline, I give you better visibility in AWS. I like it, but then your bullet point is I'll give you in-depth visibility into it. I don't understand. Right? Go back to our thing. What's the problem? Like if you're gonna do a bullet point like this, that's a good feature. So a feature should start with a problem and then have a solution, and there should be a consequence mixed into that.
They also say for Palo Alto, they offer enhanced visibility and automation.
See, and this is why ServiceNow had to do that piece about automation, because it's like, do I like automation? Yes. Do I like visibility? Yes. Do I like using it nonstop in order to describe nothing? No, it confuses me. By the way, this could be awesome, but
it could be
end-to-end visibility. I've never heard of it called that. End-to-end encryption?
End-to-end of what? Like where are you starting and where are you ending?
Visibility to me is 10,000-foot view, and maybe the ability to drill down subsequent to that. But can I take a look at the whole landscape, and can like, if I come to you, Paul, and I say, hey, what are the top 10 things you're concerned about? I want you to be able to like look at a drawing and point it out to me or show me, and not say, well, actually, Michael, there's 100, because with 100 you're screwed, right? That's where visibility works to me, and visibility gets people on the same page and stuff like that. But end-to-end visibility, I don't know, neat concept.
We need when you use the term visibility, it has to be closely related to a problem. And,
absolutely,
and provide some insight as to why that visibility, what that visibility is, and why it helps me.
Yeah, why it solves it. Yeah. Like prove to me you understand the problem of not being able to see this, this, and this. And if I give you visibility to it, then you can react faster. Right. Or you can, I'm in.
More data in context around that.
Context.
Context is important when we talk about visibility. The reason I'm identifying as an overused term in our industry today is because so many vendors are using it but not providing that context.
You know, I've got this.
AlgoSec could have the greatest solution under the sun right now, but I don't have visibility into it.
I have this blog post sketched. I'm going to run it on our network, and it's content isn't king, context is king. Yeah. And that goes for what we do in security. That goes for marketing. That goes for communication. We don't have a content problem. We have a context problem. If your visibility gives me better context, I'm in. If it doesn't, it's just there. Has your Office 365 account been hacked?
Yeah, so Coalfire kind of did an analysis about Office 365 and noticed some trends that there's been a significant number of attacks against Office 365 accounts. That
makes sense.
What I found most interesting in this article was they pulled Microsoft's recommendation for securing Office 365, and it goes like this: require multi-factor authentication, audit and review the logs for access, enable anti-spam and anti-malware protection within your endpoint security solution, configure and utilize data loss prevention.
So it's easy, is what you're saying.
They provide some context, which they say allows you to identify sensitive data and create policies to help prevent the sharing of that data. I'm not sure we necessarily associate that activity with DLP necessarily, but I agree with the last sentence that you should identify sensitive data and create policies to help prevent the sharing of data. I do. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Not easy, as you said about the other things.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I'll tell you what, because I have an Office 365 account, so I'm much smaller on it. Every time I've had to set up MFA, and I had to do it twice because I switched up phones and I screwed something up. I had to call up their documentation and like get real specific guidance on how to go through it. Whereas with Google Apps, that was pretty straightforward for me. Like I got it, it made sense, I was able to do it. So it's interesting. That said, they do some stuff that's nifty that I like. But I'm looking at the rest of this going, how much of that did I do? How much of that could I do? And then the smaller shop that I am, how much of that should I do? Eesh. That's interesting. This is always my challenge with advice like this. Is it good? Sure. But Paul, let me ask you. So I'm an Office 365 shop, but I've also got 99 other things, and my hair's been on fire so long I have none left. Where would you put this in your priority scale?
I think that email phishing protection has to be bolted on because Microsoft doesn't.
It's not. Yeah.
Microsoft doesn't provide that.
I think the only way we'll see Microsoft provide that is if they acquire somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. And who knows if we'll see that or not? But there are some vendors that are doing a great job at email phishing prevention. And kind of the recent evolution of that is getting really good at pulling that email out. To kind of go back to Clayton's point about patient zero.
Yep.
Patient zero in an email phishing attack is really useful
Absolutely.
to identify patient zero, because they're like, I think that was a phishing attack, and then, by the way, that email gets plucked, and all the other users don't even see that attack. I think that's great.
Nope, I'm with you 100%.
So that's, if it's my enterprise that I'm in charge of defending, that's priority one for me.
You know what I love
problem.
about that, Paul, with that approach? I don't have to whack anybody in the head and tell them to watch a video. I don't have to do any training. I don't have to do anything. I'm just using what we're able to figure out and act. Oh, I like that a lot.
Yeah. And then I like multi-factor authentication.
Me too. I'm a fan.
Because it doesn't get rid of everything that people think it does, but it helps get rid of some of the cruft with attacks against your credentials, right? Like if I reused my password somewhere and someone got it, now they got to somehow bypass multi-factor, which is not impossible, but it's a barrier. Now, if you can implement it without having too much of an impact on your users,
well, I was going to point out, that's the thing I think Microsoft's done pretty smart. They have the Microsoft Authenticator app.
Yeah.
And if you set it up right and you're authenticated into your phone, it doesn't then require me to do a code. It'll bounce it to the app and say, do you approve it? And if I say yes, it sends it back as a confirm instead of me doing the code. And you would think, well, that's not a big deal. I mean, I can enter a freaking code. No, dude, it's so easy. You just click, okay, I'm good. It goes in. It's kind of like when your Apple Watch just opens up your MacBook. Like, is it a big deal? No. Is it nice? Yeah. Would I be pissed now if I don't have it? I notice it.
I think it's a good strategy to combine single sign-on and multi-factor authentication into one. Okta, Duo, those types of vendors, you know, with either their multi-factor.
Do you remember the discussion 20 years ago, though? Well, do I want to consolidate all the keys to the castle in one thing? Yeah, no, we're past that now.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a better strategy than a lot of broken keys lying around that anybody can pick up.
Right.
Like, yeah, let's go ahead and consolidate
It's interesting, you know, we talked about anti-spam, but anti-malware protection with endpoint. I don't know how much it relates to securing your OAuth account. It's kind of like they just threw that in there for good measure. Like, yeah, by the way, you should have something on every single endpoint.
Well, except for, as Clayton pointed out, so Active Directory by default, which is going to be an underpinning of Office 365, is going to trust all the users and trust all your endpoints.
Yep.
So this actually kind of fits that. I think what went through my head was, if I'm not an enterprise, and I appreciate we're an Enterprise Security Weekly, but if I'm not an enterprise, this advice is a foreign language.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And if I am an enterprise, then hopefully you're already looking at your endpoints at some level. Or, as Clayton pointed out, you're paying attention that there's something central that you can watch instead, or in addition to. I think we're going to be layered for a while till we get it figured out, and I think we're going to find each enterprise has got its own flavor. You know, it's like there was a time where if you wanted to argue to put something else in your enterprise network, it was almost like, you know, well, I want a new pair of shoes, but I got to throw an old pair out. Like, I can't put in your air gap stuff because I already have a firewall, and I can't put any more stuff in the network. They went through a phase where it was like, just bolt it all in, baby. Put it in wherever you want it. And now we have too much. People are overwhelmed, and we can't even keep track of it. Paul, if you've got 70 vendors,
and they don't know what's working and what's not. As we talked about this when?
We talk about it a lot, but I'm pretty sure we talked about it on Friday on Business Security Weekly. We talked about a scorecard.
Yeah.
And can you tell me, if you've got 50 things in there, which ones are performing for you, which are the dogs? And, you know, a lot of the enterprise security folks I talk to, you know, Paul, it's not about how many plates that you can get spinning in the air. It's which ones you can drop.
Right.
And our attitude is none, but that's not, it's not possible, right? Like, that's just putting us at continued risk. So.
Well, that rounds it out for the news. We've got a webcast coming up next. I hope everyone is able to tune in for that. If you're watching this show live now and you want to take a break for 40 minutes and come back to a fabulous webcast, you can go to securityweekly.com/domain tools and register for that. Mike and I are going to take a break. And if you register for the webcast, you'll be able to watch it.
You'll see us again shortly. We'll look just like we look now.
Thanks, everyone, for listening and watching. We'll see you next time.